So, with all the stuff going on in the Middle East, we would expect maybe prices of gas and oil to go up, right? But something funny happened from about 6 years ago that people were able to start to harness what has been the biggest resource here in our country, natural gas. And they have done a great job of taking care of using those resources in a environmentally friendly way. I have to always say that now, don't you? That's kind of the politically correct way of doing it. An environmentally friendly way. And we have been able to offset what used to be a total reliance on the Middle East, where we used to have our lines for gasoline and our alternate days we go get it. We see the gas spike up to 3-something constantly. Gas is going up a little bit right now, and oil's going up a little bit. But, for the most part, we have not been stung like we used to be. Why is that? Well, Rob Boulware is a Stakeholder Relations Manager for Seneca Resources. Seneca operates more than 3,000 shallow wells and more than 150 deep shale wells in New York State and Pennsylvania. And one of the things that has to be done here, annually, there is a report that comes out here in Pennsylvania on how much is produced in terms of this kind of oil production from unconventional well operators. So they have to report on August 15th for the period of January 1st through June 30th for the same calendar year. And then on February 15th, that was 2 days ago, for the period of July 1st through December 31st on the previous calendar year. And that report was to come out this morning. We are joined this morning by Rob Boulware here on the Gary Sutton Show. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I understand, by the way, you're a heck of an athlete. You were a Penn State track guy. Is that right?
Oh, back in the day.
Oh, what do you mean back in the day? How far back in the day?
Pretty far back.
You don't sound that old now. When do you get to be my age? But, Rob, it's good to have you in this morning. Hey, I want to ask you very quickly, before we get to the report, about the difference between shallow wells and deep shale wells. What's the big difference on those kind of wells? Because for the layman out here, we're going, okay, how shallow is shallow and how deep is deep?
Well, most people in Pennsylvania are aware of the rich oil and gas history that we've benefited from throughout the Commonwealth. America's first oil well was discovered in Titusville.
Right.
You had the Drake well. But operators like Seneca Resources have been around for 100 years. I say we're a traditional oil and gas company with 100 years experience. We have everything from the drill bit to the burner tip, meaning that we're an E&P company, exploration company, we're a pipeline company, and we also have distribution customers. So the shallow wells have that long-standing history. Obviously, you didn't have the technology that we have today that allows us to, drill into the Marcellus and the Utica regions. But the reality is, early on, people were sinking wells that were 2,000-3,000 feet deep,
right,
with rudimentary technology. In fact, when you get down to even what they call fracking, there was a term that we had in the early days called shooting the well, where you would drop nitroglycerin down in that well bore to crack the rock just to release the oil and gas. So we've been experimenting with oil and gas in Pennsylvania for a long time, and we have some great techniques, and we evolve as technology moves forward.
And again, a lot of people always worry about the environmental effect this is going to have. You have a lot of people who oppose this kind of stuff, and I won't say a lot, a segment of people who oppose this kind of thing. I often kid. I say, I've never heard of someone running out and say, well, let me just open up a well here and heck with anything else around it. There are certain procedures in place to make sure that you are environmental friendly, right?
Oh, we are one of the most highly regulated industries in North America. When you look at the oil and gas regulations, specifically in Pennsylvania, our company operates in California. We've operated in Texas. We've operated in New York. We're one of the largest oil producers out in California. And I would say, California has the strictest regulations, and Pennsylvania is only a hair behind as far as the regulations and oversight that we have. It's a variety of both federal rules that apply as well as state rules that apply, and it's a good system.
When you look at this rule that the Department of Environmental Protection came out with, I guess the Pennsylvania's Oil and Gas Act requires unconventional well operators to submit production reports to the Department of Environmental Protection. What is an unconventional well?
Well, unconventional well is a term that has been used to classify the development in the Utica and the Marcellus.
Okay.
And that would include the techniques that we all hear the term fracking. So you have that, as opposed to a standard well bore where you would drill down in a vertical manner, the unconventional wells have both a vertical bore as well as that horizontal lateral. And that lateral is what ultimately is fracked, and that releases the oil and gas.
The report that was to be done by the 15th was to come out this morning. Has it come out yet? And if so, what does it say?
Well, it did come out. As you know, by law, we're required to report to the PADEP, Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. And what it revealed is that Pennsylvania is setting record numbers for natural gas production. For the second half of the year, that number tapped 2 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, which gives us approximately 4 trillion cubic feet of natural gas for the year. When you consider back in 2010, Pennsylvania was a net importer of natural gas. And that is not just significant for 2010, but that's throughout the history. Even though we had several shallow wells in the area, we were a net importer of natural gas. And now that's turned around not only to the point that we're meeting our own supply for the state, but we have this ability to deliver gas up and down the eastern seaboard, and we're now producing about 20% of the natural gas that's consumed in the United States.
That's incredible stuff. And I saw the first half of the year in 2014, you produced 1.9 trillion, so that's why you said very close to 4 trillion cubic feet. You look at what has happened here over the last 6 years, and maybe a little bit beyond that as well. There were a lot of people that said we're never going to see gasoline come back down again. We're never going to see it back near the $2 mark. We're not going to see any of that kind of stuff. And yet that's exactly what we've seen. The turnaround here with how we've been able to get to these deposits has been pretty much breathtaking, has it not?
Oh, it's incredible. When you consider, what this means in general, that in 2004, 2006, we were paying over $8 an MCF for natural gas. When you consider what that meant to the general consumer, how much more they were putting out for their energy needs, and to fast forward to where we are now, to where gas is less than $2 an MCF. I mean, that's just, not only is it a huge boost for the industry, it's a huge boost for the economy. When you think of consumer utility costs, the average Pennsylvanian saving over $650 per household. That's real money.
You talk about this production, so I guess the mathematical equation here, Rob, is very simple. If production keeps going up, the cost keeps going down for Pennsylvania. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement. Now, Grant, you do have a breaking point. One of the things that we have to look at, obviously, pipelines have been a huge conversation, especially in the southeastern corner of Pennsylvania, that at some point, supply, and we're near that point right now where supply is greater than the ability to get it to market.
Right.
The reality is we really need to get it to that eastern seaboard or the major population centers of the United States. And what that'll mean is the price will come up some, still be very reasonable for customers in Pennsylvania and across the area, but it makes it more economical to drill.
When you look at what has been a big argument here over in the Peckway area and so forth, a lot of people talking about this. What's the biggest argument they have against the well and against the pipeline coming through their area?
Well, it's an odd dynamic. In Pennsylvania, it's a little bit different than some other states, certainly. So, people try to compare the economics. But what we need to do is find ways to embrace it. When you consider all of the potential manufacturing jobs that could be created over the next 5 to 10 years as a result of cheap or inexpensive natural gas, how can those areas capture it? If you're in a spot in southeastern PA that didn't have a abundant gas supply, and now you have a major pipeline that's coming through your area, it's very possible that a manufacturing facility that otherwise would have gone all the way over to Philadelphia or might have maintained over in Pennsylvania or Pittsburgh side, it might end up in York County.
We're talking with Rob Boulware this morning, who is the Stakeholder Relations Manager for Seneca Resources. Rob, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. For a lot of people out there, they're saying, okay, well, what does this all mean to me in my pocketbook? And I saw a number that jumped out at me here and some information that was sent on behalf of you. In 2013, people paid $4 less per 1,000 cubic feet than they did in 2008. I mean, that's big stuff. So, I mean, the price of what we're paying right now is obviously going down. But specifically here in places like York County, what will happen to costs here? And as people try to budget money aside for the various costs and energy?
Well, you have a local distribution company there called Columbia Gas of Pennsylvania, which serves a big chunk of York County. Those costs are passed on directly to the consumer. Utility companies are not allowed to make or lose money on the commodity cost of natural gas. So if that price that they're purchasing the natural gas supplies for is lower, then that's a direct consumer savings. And it's a great opportunity. Then when you consider from the backside, what is the gas being used for? When you look at manufacturing across the globe, these are opportunities that could come back to the United States. And if we're smart enough, we find ways to capture it and bring those jobs back into Pennsylvania. I mean, they're estimating that it could be somewhere close to 1.4 million jobs in manufacturing by 2014. And those jobs need a home, and Pennsylvania would be a great place for it. So if you've lowered the cost of production, those other goods and services that come into your home or that our consumers are purchasing, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the United States, that price goes down, and those dollars, again, go back into the consumer's pocket.
Just wanted to correct you on one thing. I think it was 1.41 million by 2040.
Correct.
Was the date. Yeah, you said 2014.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. The annual cost savings they're predicting as well, $22.3 billion in 2030 and $34.1 billion in 2040. So the question is, why wouldn't we embrace natural gas with a full-throated yeah?
Well, you really need to. When you look at what the development has done across Pennsylvania, I mean, we're very fortunate that the resource lies underneath the state. If you go back through the numbers, there's been about $1 billion invested by the shale industry in roads and infrastructure improvements. You've had over $2 billion paid in taxes. You have the wages associated with the industry. The average salary in Pennsylvania is about $58,000. The average salary in this industry is about $89,000.
Wow. So
there are a variety of ways that Pennsylvania is truly benefiting from oil and gas production, and we need to find ways to use the product. When you consider some of the stories that you hear over on the western side of the state where colleges and universities are converting their heating systems from diesel and oil over to natural gas, you have the emissions benefit of cleaner air, and you also have the benefit of having that lower cost. And when you consider education specifically, down at the high school level, our taxes all go to support that. You have that opportunity where their energy costs are reduced. And certainly when you look across the board, there's some schools that have actually allowed drilling to come under their property, and they're receiving the benefit from having that asset create royalty payments for them. And what people need to understand is that we have done a great job of trying to find ways to adopt new technology and move forward to ensure that we're able to protect the environment and have a safe working environment for oil and gas development.
Rob, to that point, one of the numbers that jumped out at me was that the natural gas industry has cut methane emissions by 17% since 1990, even as you've increased production by 37%. I think those are remarkable numbers.
Well, it is. I mean, again, that's embracing technology. We have something that we have on our well pads. It's an infrared detector and an ultrasonic detector. It's state of the art. We have something like 95% of these units that are onshore. They used to be used on the offshore rigs down in the Gulf. and they can pick up a molecule of natural gas. I mean, understanding natural gas is the product that we sell. We have a vested interest not only from a safety standpoint for the community and our workers, but we have a vested interest to protect that product, because if it's escaping, we're not going to be able to sell it. So obviously it's something that's very important for us, but we've done a variety of things. The other is on emissions in general. We converted our natural gas drilling rigs, or our drilling rigs, to natural gas, and we've had emission numbers that are in the high 90s on VOx and NOx and some of those reductions. And you consider if we were to, move that over to the pipeline system where you're using natural gas compressor engines, again, you'll see a reduction in cleaner air around those drilling locations.
Rob, one of the things that our new governor has decided to do is to try to get a severance tax paid at the wells here in Pennsylvania. And we already had an impact fee that Governor Corbett had imposed along with the state assembly. And I guess my question for you is, I remember the campaign rhetoric was, well, we're the only state that doesn't pay a severance tax. And I looked into that and I said, yeah, but a lot of the other states don't have all the various taxes we already have in this industry. Tell us a little bit about what this industry is paying in taxes right now and what a severance tax would do to this industry.
Well, it's a lot of taxes across the board that sometimes get missed. In general, we've paid over $2 billion in taxes to the state of Pennsylvania. But you also have to look at the fact that the capital franchise tax in Pennsylvania exceeds West Virginia. That's one of the comparison models. But then it gets down to something so simple as fuel costs. If you're not running a natural gas rig and you're running a diesel rig, you're probably using anywhere between 2,000 and 4,000 gallons a day. And as most people realize, the reason why our gas prices haven't dropped below $2 a gallon for gasoline, like it has in some of the neighboring states, is because we enacted in January a new tax. So you throw just that extra 30 cents or 28 cents that they put on top of our previous gas price in taxes times 2,000 to 4,000 gallons a day, and you can see even that becomes a significant tax. When you look at West Virginia specifically, they get a break on any of the road and pad construction that they do in preparation to drill a rig. That does not come into play in Pennsylvania. So there's a variety of things that you have to look at, but across the board, the industry is paying more taxes in general. The other thing that has to be considered is the actual price of gas that we're getting. Right now, gas is trading for less than $2 an MCF. At $2 an MCF, and you add in that 4.5 cents per 1,000 cubic feet plus the 5% tax, at today's price, it actually adds up to be about an 8.5% tax on the industry. When you consider what the state of the economy is in Pennsylvania, the state of the economy across the nation, this is probably not the right time to put a crippling tax on the industry.
So what happens? Where's the breaking point? I'm going to ask you that question when we come back. I want to take a very quick break. We'll come back with Rob Boulware with us here on the Gary Sutton Show. Rob is a Stakeholder Relations Manager for Seneca Resources. When is it too much tax that's going to be paid, and do you have the ability to move elsewhere if that would happen? We'll ask Rob that question, too. As we're looking this morning at the new report that about 2 trillion more cubic feet produced in the second half of 2014. 4 trillion cubic feet of natural gas produced in 2014. I mean, incredible numbers, and how it has grown and where it's going to grow to. We'll ask Rob more questions about natural gas when we come back here on the Gary Sutton Show on News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. Rob Boulware with us this morning, a Stakeholder Relations Manager for Seneca Resources. So, Rob, I guess the question I want to ask here is, we're seeing a boom right now in natural gas. It seems like something we ought to be reveling in around the country. I mentioned that earlier, and yet at the same time, we seem to want to try to hit it with taxes as hard as we can. When is enough?
Well, everybody needs to understand that this is a business. You'll constantly hear people say that the gas is underneath Pennsylvania, the companies can't move. But anybody who follows the simple math, look at the rig counts. Rigs come and go on a regular basis because most of the companies engaged in development have the ability to move to other places. As I mentioned, we are a 100-year-old Pennsylvania company. Our roots started here in Pennsylvania, but we've also drilled in the Gulf. We've drilled in Texas. We're currently drilling in Kansas, and we have a steady operations out in California. And we're one of the smaller companies from Pennsylvania and one of the smaller companies engaged in the play. So when you consider some of the larger companies like ExxonMobil, they have somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 250 deep wells in Pennsylvania, but that's out of an inventory of, say, 10,000 wells that they have across the country. So everybody has the ability to find out where the economics are right and perfect for drilling. So you have those options of moving on. And it's not as if folks are necessarily opposed to a fair tax. The impact fee was a great example. The impact fee was to direct those dollars back to those communities that were adversely impacted by drilling. That they're going to see more traffic, they're going to see a variety of things, the activities taking place there, and quite frankly, in a lot of these rural communities, they need the dollars. That this was a great economic generator for these communities. Consider Cameron County, for example. Cameron County doesn't have a traffic light.
Okay.
Population of about 4,000 people. For them to get $1 million to come in as a result of drilling, that's a significant amount of money, especially when you consider, Cameron, Elk, McKean County, probably throw in Potter County. Somewhere in the neighborhood of up to 50% of their land is either owned by the state or the federal government, so they don't even have a tax base to get those revenues. So when you consider it across the board, it was an economic boost for a lot of these small municipalities that otherwise would not have a source to generate more revenue.
Governor Wolf, when he came in not too long ago, also pulled back some of the lands that had been set aside here for drilling in an earlier time. Your thoughts about that and what that has done to the industry, if anything?
Well, we have an unusual situation in our acreage position in that we are one of the larger drillers on state-owned land. We participated in the leasing process, and we gained access to lands up in Lycoming, Tioga, and Potter County that were part of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. And what people don't realize is the extra measures that we take and that the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources takes to make sure that those environments are protected. On the backside of it, the DCNR generated a significant amount of revenue back in to support their cause. At the end of the day, they actually have had a net gain in acreage because they've used dollars that they've gained from drilling to expand the acreage position that they held and make other park improvements. At the peak when gas prices were higher, but just looking back to 2014, the DCNR is probably brought in about $100 million in royalty payments, of which about $60 million stayed with the DCNR and approximately $40 million went back to the state general fund. So it was a good opportunity for them to then do other things and meet their programming needs in a cooperation with the oil and gas companies to help and make sure that that development is done in a responsible manner.
What do you say to people out there who say any kind of drilling is not going to be responsible, that there are going to be environmentalists, there's going to be the green people out there who are going to say, you know what, I don't want to see any of that done at all. Probably can't argue with some of those people at all, but for people who might be listening a little bit, what would you say to them?
Well, we are in an unprecedented low temperature time frame for winter, so our temperatures are trailing a lot lower. I think at the end of the day, we all realize that we want our furnaces to work. We want some heat. We want hot water when we shower. We'd like to cook over a stove. So we need to find ways to do this the right way. And we're diligently trying as companies to do that, and we'd be better off if we all pull our oars in the same direction, that the environmentalists join us in finding ways to make sure that we're doing this right and developing Pennsylvania's resources in a responsible manner as opposed to opposing it. That when you look across the board, I'm very fortunate that I've done maybe 50 town meetings a year in a variety of locations, and I've never had anybody start the conversation with, here's the 40% of my life I'd like to give back or give up, so no one has to drill.
Right. Final question for you. You and I are sitting here talking this time next year, and what will the numbers look like then, just roughly? I mean, I know you can't predict them, but obviously it's growing. The capacity to grow, what's being done in that regard here in Pennsylvania?
Well, I think the numbers will probably stay about the same. You might even see them tail off. Part of that because we have an uncertain political climate, so we're not sure what's going to happen. But more importantly, if those pipeline projects are not completed in a timely manner, gas will not move out of the basin. And if the gas doesn't move out of the basin, it probably will affect people's capital investment in Pennsylvania.
So, in other words, you need to have a little bit more of a stable climate in which you can operate before you're going to be able to really push ahead much more.
Exactly.
All right. Rob, I really appreciate all the numbers and inside information this morning. I learned an awful lot about this, and I did not know a lot going in. So thank you for educating me and all of our listeners out there.
Thank you.
Rob, we'll look forward to doing it again. Thank you so much. Take care. Rob Boulware, Stakeholder Relations Manager for Seneca Resources. He found a little bit about shallow wells this morning and deep shale wells and what this is doing for gas prices and your prices.